Geometry Dash 2.2 has been out for exactly 1 year. Kind of. I don't actually know or have any plan for when this video is going to release, so it could release before the anniversary, after, or hell, maybe I get really good at planning and this whole little joke here is irrelevant and it did release on time. I have no idea. Point is, as of this video, it should be around a year old. Here's the thing, we knew for a fact that 2.2 was going to be kind of a mess when it released. Not even necessarily in a bad way, it's just releasing an update to a game that hasn't gotten an update in like 7 years. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit messy, but obviously as time goes on, things should improve, right? Well, that's what this video is about. This video is mainly to look into how 2.2 has gone a year in. Now, eagle-eyed viewers of mine probably know that this is very similar to Scott the Woz's Nintendo Switch X Years In series, and yeah, that's exactly what inspired this. Like, straight up, this is just the Scott the Woz thing, but for Geometry Dash 2.2, and also the format's not going to be the same because I don't want to cover the entirety of the update. I just want to give my thoughts on the update, so it's more retrospective and less covering literally every event. So yeah, this shouldn't be as long either, but same idea. I just wanted to be very transparent that I got this idea from Scott the Woz. That being said, here are all my opinions on how I feel about the game 1 year in.
Butterfly Desktop.
So Geometry Dash as a game has always been pretty buggy, I feel, and I actually want to talk about the state of the game and all of its bugs. When 2.2 dropped, it was heavily criticized for how buggy it was. I mean, if you placed a middle ground in your level, it would just instantly delete the level. It would just crash the game and the level would be gone. I will say, though, thankfully, this game has gotten a ton of micro updates over the span of this year, and the post-launch support of the update has been pretty solid, and for the most part, I don't really think the game is anywhere near as buggy as it was when it first dropped. Don't get me wrong, there are still bugs, however, I think the game is generally just a more smooth experience all around, and definitely more playable than it was in 2.1. I have seen people online get very mad at how buggy 2.2 is in some cases and all that kind of stuff, right? But what you need to remember is that 2.1 was so much worse. A lot of people don't remember this because they're very nostalgia-goggled for 2.1, but there were certain levels that you couldn't even open without a memory patch. Like, 2.1 was horribly unstable and barely functioned in some cases. It's a miracle, honestly, that 2.2 fixed as much as it did. That being said, not everything is absolutely perfect when it comes to GD and bugs, and what I find fascinating are the bugs that are new to 2.2 that have broken old features. Most notably for me is the wave trail. This is something that has occasionally been brought up enough to where there is a geode mod to soft fix this bug, but basically the wave trail is an absolute mess. It's something that you won't notice unless you know what you're looking for or someone like points it out to you, but when you notice, it is so irritating. Basically, the wave trail can have these little jaggies where it looks like the wave is physically being bent. It's really hard to explain, but when you notice it, it is hard not to notice, and it is obnoxious. Another thing that's really getting on my nerves is the occasional, like, this one feature will break for this one micro update. The most recent one, as of recording this, was dash orbs have been completely fucked up. The level Hungry Humphrey, as of recording this, just is not possible, and that's because for whatever reason, Robtop changed the way backwards arched dash orbs work, except I don't think that's why. I think he just fucked something up with the dash orbs, because there's something more annoying with the dash orbs that I don't see people discuss that bothers me. I don't know if this is OCD or what, but it's something that changed that I don't like. The animation for the dash orb spinning is like going the wrong way most of the time now, and I don't know why. Like, it just doesn't look right. I know the dash orb one seems like it doesn't matter, but whatever the hell broke this animation didn't just stop at breaking the animation. Like I said, it makes it so that dash orbs facing the other way now act differently than they're supposed to, and so the dash orb at the beginning of Hungry Humphrey doesn't work correctly, and now that level's impossible. And it's not the only one. I actually had to bug fix one of my own levels because the same thing happened in that. And it's just weird. I don't know what happened here. In general, it's just weird how 2.2 has been in this pattern of fix old bugs but introduce new ones. And I really hope that some sort of stability can happen across updates in the future, where hopefully we start to see less and less game-breaking bugs be introduced, because these bugs may not seem like they matter that much, but they are making levels that are rated on the servers impossible. And every so often there's a new one. Like, I remember when coyote timing was messed with, which, if you don't know, is basically the whole thing where, like, a frame after you exit a hitbox, you can still jump off of that hitbox. It's just weird in general around that stuff like this keeps being messed with. However, in general, I do just want to say that I think that this update has been a general net positive for fixing bugs in this game, and honestly, I'm just glad to be out of 2.1. That was such a buggy mess. I swear to God, anyone who used the 2.1 editor regularly without Better Edit knows what I'm talking about. It was so much buggier in 2.1. Like, I'm just glad we're out of that. Also, I will say, too, it's also worth noting, even though people would argue that the handling of it was poor, it is worth noting that the Hertz bug that plagued this game for pretty much all of its lifespan also did get fixed, and that is a good thing. Whether or not, locking the physics on 240 instead of 360 was a good idea, that's obviously up to you, and people can criticize that aspect of it all day, and, they're valid in doing so. But that defeats the point of what I'm saying, and I still think, regardless of if you don't agree with how it was done, it is still admirable that this bug was finally fixed, because the refresh rate bug really was a problem, especially when we're talking about leveling the playing field.
We have technology!
I do want to take a step back first and talk about just level quality on its own, like ignoring specific points like problems with the gameplay and lag, which we'll get into later. I do just want to talk about how much better the levels are and how good of a trade-off it honestly is. Like, if you ignore all of the problems, creators have been making some breathtaking visuals in this update, and honestly some pretty optimized and pretty good gameplay as well. And I think that that mainly just comes down to all of the improvements to the editor. Now, I am a creator, but I'm not a good enough creator to get a level rated. I mainly create for fun. I don't think my levels are bad. I actually feel like I have a pretty good knowledge around the editor, but at the same time, they may not be bad, but they're definitely not, as good as what other people can make in this community. Just to give you an idea of how much easier the 2.2 editor has made things for creators, let's talk about the circles effect, because that's something I'm very intimate with, right? In 2.1 and earlier, to make the 9 circles effect, what you had to do was you had to place down a color trigger, and then place down another color trigger slightly to the right with the exact same value, but set it to fade out black rather than have it instantly flash into a color. And this gave it this appearance where it would have the color pop in and then slowly fade out. And then you would have 4 copy pastes of that, where you would do one for each of the color channels in your circles effect. And you usually did around 4 colors, right? Although some levels do use more. Usually 4 is the way to go, right? And the thing is, you would end up, after this is all said and done, with about 8 triggers, right? And that doesn't sound like a lot, but then what you'd have to do is copy paste those same 8 triggers over and over and over and over again to create this sort of constant pulse. Now, there are ways you were able to optimize this, like you could use the pulse trigger instead of the color trigger, but most people actually just preferred using the color trigger because it gave it this old school look. Now, there's nothing wrong with building the circles effect this way. Like, yeah, it uses a lot of objects, but all those objects are triggers, so it's not going to cause much lag or anything like that. However, it is still object heavy, And 2.2 added a build loop button, which automatically builds a spawn loop for you. And, well, yes, you could use a spawn loop to optimize it in 2.1. Now it's as simple as build those 8 triggers, press build loop, and boom, your circle's effect is done. And you don't need to, like, have it keep going. It'll just infinitely loop until you set a stop trigger. It's really, really useful. The editor is filled with these sort of optimizations. One thing that creators used to abuse in 2.1 was actually kind of locked behind mods, and that was overscaling objects. That's now a feature in-game. You can just do that. And that's really good because that became a sort of creator meta with the amount of effects you could do with that. Even I use overscaled objects. It's a really useful tactic, and when you combine stuff like that with new 2.2 features, the sky is the limit. The particle trigger is a beast with the amount of shit you can do with it. It almost reminds me of back when Sputniks created one object entire background using a text object. I say all of what I just said to say that with the tools these creators have been given, the quality of the levels as a whole has skyrocketed. What would have been an impressive 2.1 level is now pretty much the standard in 2.2. And the funny thing about that is, in a lot of cases where that is the case, it doesn't even feel like it shot the rate standards that far up. Because, like, for example, right, super detailed looking and well-made pixel level, right? Pixel levels used to require a ton of time for you to sit down and create the assets one by one in 2.1. The most impressive visual level I can think of in 2.1 is Storming Summit, and that's a good example of this whole pixel thing. And in 2.2, there's a whole slew of pixel objects you can use yourself that are basically base block objects, sort of like the Finger Dash rocks. But unlike the Finger Dash rocks, there's so many infinite ways you can use these, and creators have used them to create these beautiful looking pixel levels. And honestly, I don't think this style will die very much in the future because it's so visually pleasing and it's somewhat easy to make. I'll go so far as to say that if you're going for your first rate, a good way to go about it is to use the pixel objects. Don't just, like, let them be your template. Obviously, like, make something unique looking, but I would genuinely say that making a pixel level is, like, the way to get your first rate, especially if you make a platformer. Of course, take that with a grain of salt, because I don't have my first rate, but point still stands. I genuinely feel like this is the case, and, yeah, I mean, even if I'm wrong about that, the fact that that perception exists, it's like, it's insane what you can do with the objects in this game right now. And, I mean, I've obviously been showing examples of good-looking levels in the background. I remember one of the most mind-blowing moments of this year was when the level Next Cab Soon dropped. Now, Next Cab Soon is a level I have a lot of issues with. My main complaints come down to invisible hitboxes that kill you if you don't play the level exactly how the creator wants you to. I just don't like the idea of killing you with an invisible wall. I think that you should be killed by the actual environment presented to you in the level. However, as much as I have problems with Next Cab Soon, it did something really cool, and that's its coin. So, Next Cab Soon has one of those, like, really complicated Raffer coins where you have to take a bunch of hidden paths in the level, and you have to collect a bunch of things, and I believe you have to collect letters that form a phone number, and if you collect every single letter, a coin will appear at the end of the level. And then, if you rebeat the level a second time, you get the coin. That is already pretty cool, but it gets cooler in the way the coin appears at the end screen, because you don't just hit the end screen and then instantly restart. You have to wait, and this girl sitting on this bench will call a cab and then play GD on her phone, and they demonstrate this with the song trigger. That is a really nice touch.
A few moments later.
Now, one thing I want to say, too, that is the thing that has been impressing me the most is the frequency these super impressive levels have been coming out. A lot of people have been upset because Robtop supposedly said, oh, there'll only be a couple mythics a year or something like that, even though, as far as my research goes, I don't think he ever actually said that. I think GD Cole had mentioned this as well, but I can't find evidence of Robtop ever saying that, and other people haven't been able to find evidence of that. But whatever, let's assume that's true, because even if he didn't say that, that's like what you would expect from the god tier, like, best of the best rating, right? People have been upset that there have been too many mythics. I don't think there really have been. As of recording this, there are 11 mythics. And they all deserve it, in my opinion. Even if you take a level that I genuinely hate that happens to be rated mythic, I don't hate it in terms of quality, I just hate the gameplay, and I'll get into that later. But even if you take a level that I truly despise, like WannaCry is still visually and technically impressive to a point where you can justify it being rated mythic. In my opinion, this level does deserve it. And not every mythic is going to please you, especially when, you know, some are going to be rated platformer, some are going to be rated classic, some are going to be rated extreme, some are going to not be demon at all. And all four of those things, there is a different person on this planet that will not enjoy one of those things at least. So in general, I think all of the mythics have deserved it up until this point, and that being said, I want to go back to my original point. We already have 11 mythics, and most of these levels are visually of the same quality of some of the, like, once-a-year truly impressive stuff from 2.1. Again, stuff like White Space and Boomslayer. These levels had these super intricate, almost keyframed animations, they looked beautiful, and the only problem they really had is that a lot of people couldn't run them. These levels used to be so rare, and now they're being cranked out almost monthly, and it's insane. The fact that Calypso Blitz is not rated Mythic, it's rated Legendary, which means the creator of the game thinks that you can still do better than this, and Calypso Blitz, if you put it side by side with Boomslayer, is honestly more impressive. That says a lot. In general, I mainly just wanted to make this overall point that I think even if there are levels that I don't consider to be good that came out this year, even those questionable levels, those are only bad because of something I specifically don't like about them, like, you know, a problem with the gameplay. Like I said, we'll be getting into this whole discussion later in the video, but even levels that I have a major problem with, like Next Cab Soon, or WannaCry, or Berserker, or I'm naming the NCS Gauntlet levels, you'll notice. Even levels with those problems, I personally think are insanely high quality, even if there are problems that make me not like them. The quality in general of levels this update has gone up so much, and it's just blown me away. It's really cool to see this game come this far as an art form.
Developers.
So, you remember all the way back in the first point when I talked about the fact this update had a bit of a rocky start, and it started off pretty buggy, but later on became a lot better and kind of fixed itself. And I also mentioned that despite that, there are occasionally bugs that crop up here and there, like the wave trail. Well, about all of that, that issue led to a huge boom in modding and mod development for this game. Don't get me wrong, Geometry Dash always had mods. Even since the beginning, in the early days of mobile, people were downloading, like, APK cheating apps to do stuff like speed hack back in, like, pre-1.9 days, but, you know, even in updates like 2.1, not only did we have stuff like Mega Hack, but Mega Hack also eventually got a big scene with extensions, where people would make Mega Hack extensions, and they would allow you to mod. Some of them were pretty popular, too. Like, there was a mod that allowed you to fix the invisible dual bug, where it used to be the fact in 2.1 that one of your two icons would just turn invisible for some reason.
No, yeah, I jumped too high and the stupid top was invisible. I hate it when the game glitches and makes the dual parts, one of them is invisible. It drives me crazy. Why? Why is it invisible? What?
And so yes, Geometry Dash always had a modding scene. However, that modding scene never really went beyond just quality of life stuff and cheat tools, right? Megahack, for example, which used to be the biggest modding tool, it definitely was pretty big, and it definitely did a lot of things. However, when you really think about it, most of the things it did were, like, bare bones cosmetics or quality of life stuff. And by bare bones cosmetics, I'm saying stuff like the rainbow wave trail, or the ability to make your wave trail solid, or, you know, the ability to get the 1.9 particles. But a lot of these are just simple and not super complicated compared to what we would later get, as 2.2 saw the release of the biggest thing this game has gotten, in my opinion, aside of just receiving an update, which is obviously the biggest thing. But in terms of everything else, Geode is now the biggest dog when it comes to modding in this community. It has overtaken Megahack, in my opinion, because most people run Megahack inside of Geode now. Geode, for those of you who don't know, is a very kitted out and very well-made mod loader. If you're familiar with the Terraria modding scene or the Minecraft modding scene, you should probably have an idea of what this is, but basically, it's this massive launcher that basically allows you to strap and run mods pretty easily, if I'm gonna be totally honest. The difference between it and something like Minecraft's Forge launcher, though, and the thing that makes it really, really good, is that it's connected to the internet and you can search for and download all the mods from within Geometry Dash. You don't need to go to some external website like Cursed Forge, you don't need to go through all these steps to download the mod and get it running and all that sort of stuff. You just download Geode, run the executable, it does all the work for you, and then once it's installed, you just open the game, click on the little Geode button, and there it all is. You can just use whatever mod you want. On top of that, Geode has made it extremely good for developers to make mods for GD. Devs with this mod, and just GD as a whole, have straight up had some careers kickstart for them. I know several people who have started modding in GD and had a whole career excel off of that. Geode is a wonderful tool for developers and a wonderful tool for players who just want to mod their game. And that's the other side of the coin with Geode. My god, the mods that have been being developed for this game are insane. Some of them overhaul the game entirely and create completely different menu systems. Like this one, where it makes the game look like the Steam Deck. This is impressive, and a massive leap for development when you consider where we're at with 2.1, where everything was just quality of life stuff and cheat tools and all that kind of stuff. We have excelled so far as a community with the stuff we're able to do as developers and modders, and it is insane. Some of my favorite mods include stuff like the mod that allows you to customize both of your icons in the duel separately, which has allowed me personally to have this really sick blue and orange combo with my duels, which I really, really like. Two other mods I want to call attention to are custom keybinds and Discord rich presence. Well, especially with something like Discord Rich Presence, you might not consider these to be the most groundbreaking and massive overhaul mods as something like Better Info. The thing that makes these two mods impressive to me is this is an example of modders adding features that the developer has said they're going to add later. Custom keybinds I'm not too sure about, but I'm pretty sure Discord Rich Presence we're not getting until 2.3. Maybe we'll get it in 2.21, I don't know, but I just remember seeing somewhere that DRP is something we're getting in 2.3. And if that's the case, something that is 2 updates away, we already have because of modders, which is insane. There are so many mods that I could list off that are just really, really good, but I don't want to save time. I will mention a couple. GDDL integration is a really good mod, and it allows you to see and submit GDDL tiers from within the game. You have Globed, which is basically a multiplayer mod, which is insane because GD multiplayer has also been delayed pretty heavily. Level thumbnails, which lets you preview what a level looks like before you go into it, which can actually be very useful because it can tell you what update a level was in without having to do weird ID stuff. There's also a menu loop randomizer, there's miscellaneous bug fixes, which fix a lot of the bugs. There's a ton of really good mods like this, just quality of life stuff, and honestly, I would highly recommend all of you to just sit down, install Geode, and just kind of scroll through and try out some mods. Just know that not every mod in Geode is legitimate, especially if you're looking at stuff like leaderboard rules. So some of these you might want to test in safe mode and all of that, so that you don't, like, cheat or anything, if you care about that kind of thing, that is. And, you know, that's, like, the big disclaimer, but it's a lot of fun. A lot of these mods are really cool, and I could definitely sit here all day just recommending really well-made mods. That being said, however, there is one mod that has persisted in the discussion with this game, and it is a mod that I feel like we need to talk about because it has been controversial since the day it launched, and it has been out for a little over half a year now, and it has been a major deal in the community. I think it's time we talk about click between frames.
That's cheating.
Cheating! It's a jigsaw puzzle! You can't cheat!
So this is an interesting thing to talk about because I myself have gotten myself into a bit of heat in the past for this topic, but I figure in a retrospective like this we should start from the beginning. So one mod that got released that was very popular was the Click Between Frames mod. This mod came into existence because of a discrepancy with the way Robtop fixed the frame rate bug. I mentioned earlier, way back when I was talking about the bugs in this video, that there was a problem with how Robtop fixed the bug, but despite that problem, it should be praised that he fixed it. This is that problem. So basically, Robtop, instead of locking people on 360 ticks per second, locked people on 240 ticks per second. And the reason this is such a big problem is because 360 was the standard in 2.1. Everybody was playing on 360, and there are some levels that I don't even know if they're possible on 240 ticks per second. Like, has anyone done a Vernus on 240? I doubt it. So, of course, when the update first came out, no one knew how to handle this situation. You had some people beating levels on 2.1 and down-patching their games. You had people using a mod to FPS bypass in 2.2, but most people agree that that's cheating because now you can't access the higher refresh rates without modding the game. The reason it was allowed in 2.2 was because you could do it legitimately with the right hardware, but that hardware was expensive, so all the mod did was give you something you could access legitimately via the right hardware. So the mod was seen as legit then, but in 2.2, using the FPS bypass mod was illegitimate, and so it didn't work. But people still did it, despite the fact it was not a good solution. Eventually, though, the Click Between Frames mod dropped, and the moment it did, everyone fell in love with it, and immediately started making calls asking for Robtop to add it to the game. I still distinctly remember the video by Aeon Air dropping, where he gave his thoughts on it, and if Aeon Air is on board with a mod, that says a lot, because when 2.2 dropped, he abandoned Mega Hack because he didn't need it anymore. It's genuinely a good mod, and it would be a net positive if Robtop added it as a feature to the game. Even if it was toggleable, it could literally be a toggle in the settings that says, enable precise movement. Everyone wants this mod in the game. It is a net positive for everybody. But the problem with this mod is that at the moment, it's not in the game, and because of that, you cannot achieve the Click Between Frames mod effect without the mod. You cannot do it in the vanilla game, and so it is technically cheating. So what does the Click Between Frames mod do? Why is this such a big deal? Well, to give a very brief and very simple explanation, in the past, your clicks were tied to your frames, and therefore you had a certain point you could click and it would register an input. If you clicked between that, it would register the next available input. Like, it would have a slight, humanly inconceivable amount of delay. However, with the Click Between Frames mod, it removes that limit entirely, and you can literally jump whenever you want. The limit is your polling rate of your device, basically. So if you have like a Sayo, technically you have an advantage over someone with a G502, but that's in such ridiculous numbers to where it literally will not matter. So basically, near infinite precision. The sky is the limit, it is just down to what you are capable of, and there is no restrictions as to what's possible based off the game itself. So with that in mind, there's been this whole drama about whether or not it should be allowed, and I actually kind of want to give an opinion here. One that might sound different from my past opinions. So, in the past, I have gotten into hot water talking about this mod because I have been in the CBF is cheating camp. I'm actually going to give a different opinion and a different perspective here. Every single time I have talked about click between frames, I have discussed it from the perspective of legitimacy, you know, stuff like leaderboard rules and demonless submission rules and just competitive stuff like that, right? However, if you've seen anything on my channel recently, you know that I don't necessarily think you have to abide by those rules. For the most part, Geometry Dash is a single-player game. Yes, you go online and you play other people's levels, and yes, people do play it in a competitive way, but at the end of the day, most people just have the goal of beat a level. That's it. That is what this game comes down to. You find a level, you beat a level, and you do it by yourself. And the way you play this game is entirely up to you. And because of that, if you choose to play the game in a way that is not accepted by leaderboard rules, that's fine. And the reason I say, based off recent events on my channel, this opinion won't shock you, there's actually a more egregious example than CBF of me doing something like this. I hate rebeating levels, because if I have to rebeat a level, it pretty much always makes my experience with that level worse, and I always think less of the level. Because of that, I will often beat a level in the Gauntlets, and because they force you to beat Gauntlet levels twice for some reason, I'll hack the rebeat on the servers, and I don't do this for stats or anything. I literally only do this just to check that box so that it doesn't come up when I search for uncompleted demons, because I'm a completionist. I want to beat as much shit as possible. I've always been of the opinion that what I am doing is fine, but also should not be allowed on the leaderboards. It's actually kind of why I'm happy that I got leaderboard banned, and also why I'm surprised that it took so long for me to get leaderboard banned. But my point is, I see CBF in the exact same light. I personally believe it should not be allowed in competitive settings, stuff like verifications, leaderboard stats grinding, and stuff like that. But I do believe that you are not illegitimate if you play with CBF. And that's always been my take. And, yeah, I mean, Robtop did say that he was considering adding CBF to the game. Let's hope he does that so that this whole thing is laid to bed. Because CBF has been one of the most controversial aspects of this game for the past year. It is a conversation that doesn't end.
What's the most dangerous thing in my office? Is it this piece of asbestos?
So I want to specifically talk about the 64-bit update and why it is the best update this game has gotten in a long time. This was 2.206, if you don't know, and while that update brought a lot of things to the table, I think it is definitively the 64-bit update. That is its main feature. I don't care about all the other stuff that it brought in comparison to this, because this is huge, okay? In 2.1, there were levels that you could not open unless you had a patch called the 4GB patch. And even with the 4GB patch, there were still some levels you could not open. And even if you did get them to open, it was a 50-50 shot that whether or not they would just crash the game. This was usually levels that were high in object count, and yeah, let's compare that to 2.206, where not only do you get a performance boost, I'm able to run stuff like 3 depth, but also, and this is really huge, I can open Corn, a level with 1 million objects. I was able to record a showcase of this level in 8K. This is insane because that means I was able to bot the level in its entirety and then record it with an internal recorder. Keep in mind, in 2.1, I wouldn't have been able to bot the level at all because I couldn't open the damn thing. I just needed to dedicate an entire section of this video to the 64-bit update because as a content creator, this thing is a fucking godsend. This is one of the best things this game has gotten in a long time. And it doesn't just stop at being able to open object-heavy levels. The performance boost is also insane. There are some levels that I could not run in 2.1 that I can run really well in 2.206. It is mind-boggling how massive this update is, and it needed its own segment in this video because of how huge this is. Like, if there's anything in particular I want to thank Robtop for within the past year, it's this update. This is massive. So here's something that I definitely think is worth discussing. No Copyright Sounds collabing with GD. This is kind of a big deal, even though a lot of people don't seem to be talking about it the way that I'd expect them to. If you think about it, this is the first big brand deal Geometry Dash has ever made, even though that brand is a brand that releases music without a copyright attached to it. Yeah, this is a brand deal, which is kind of a big deal. This is Robtop making a deal with another company, which is kind of insane when you think about it. But the main thing I want to discuss is I think that this was a really good brand deal. Not only is it good for the game because you get a bunch of high-quality music built right into the game without the need to use Newgrounds, but all of that music is copyright-free, which is good for content creators, and most importantly, because of this deal, and because this music is being used so much now, I've actually listened to quite a bit of No Copyright Sounds' releases, and there's a huge variety of artists, and almost every song I hear from NCS is good. There are some exceptions, there are some songs that I'm not that big of a fan of, but for the most part, even the overplayed shit like Cradles sounds good, and that is definitely something I really want to bring attention to. I just think it's really admirable that the first brand deal Robtop ever did actually gave me an appreciation for said brand. I unironically listen to No Copyright Sounds now. I think their music is really good. And I don't know, I just thought that was worth discussing.
He was told his Little Caesars pizza was not hot and ready. Pulling an AK-47.
Alright, so now we're getting into the bigger topics, which I intentionally saved for last because they're the things I have the most to say about, and I want to talk about platformer mode, just as a whole. I feel like getting ready for 2.2's released platformer is the thing people were the most skeptical about. I've even seen people like Warwin have the opinion that platformer and side-scroller should be separate games, but in reality, I don't think that that's too necessary. I feel like the actual levels themselves have a good separation in-game to where if you like Classic and not Platformer, you can just stick to Classic. And if you like Platformer and not Classic, you can just stick to Platformer. And it never really feels like you're forced to play one over the other. I will say, obviously, Classic does take priority, and most of the progression features do require Classic, stuff like dailies, weeklies, gauntlets, etc. But if you ignore the base progression, if you just want to boot up an online level and play whatever, it never really feels like you're forced to do both. That being said, playing a bunch of platformers as this year has gone by has been fascinating because I think that the quality of platformer is insanely scattered. Some of the worst levels I have ever played are platformers. Some of the best levels I have ever played are platformers. In that range, classic levels are somewhere in between. I don't know why, but platformer is extremely scattered, way more so than classic. There are a lot of things that I can think of that platformer levels get wrong. Two levels that come to mind while getting an aneurysm thinking about them is Stinky Shafts and 60 Seconds. These levels are prime examples of the trend of forcing the player to speedrun the level. Basically, you have a time limit that is so strict that you need to learn the speedrun route just to beat it. which feels really unnecessary because I feel like if you want to do something like that, just have it be a coin. Don't force people to speedrun the level, because that's a recipe for low enjoyment ratings, because not everyone wants to speedrun. It's kind of annoying because a lot of the ways they do this is usually like a normal level that would be fun without a timer, but there's a really strict timer, or the lava's rising, get to high ground. By the same token, however, there are a ton of platformer levels that are legitimately just masterpieces. They are fantastic levels. One level that came out recently that I believe got a legendary or mythic, I think it was a mythic rate, is basically just Space Invaders on crack with these mech spaceships. It is one of the coolest things. It's hard as hell, but I honestly boot this up not being able to beat it just because it's fun. Although, I will say, a lot more of the platformer levels have ended up on the negative side than the positive. And that doesn't mean that this is a bad mode. I want to make it very clear before I tear into some of the trends that I don't like with this mode, that at the end of the day, I'm specifically talking about the bad, and there is a lot of good. Some of my favorite levels, again, are platformers. I specifically want to call out Chromicide and Speed Tech for being really fun while being focused on a gimmick, which a lot of levels that focus on a gimmick actually don't end up being that good, but these two nail it. That being said, mainly what platformer levels I dislike are the ones that seem to follow a trend, right? They are usually harder levels, and they are copycats of other hard levels. I really hate the level I Want to Be the Guy. It had such a horrible influence on this community. It was the first extreme before it got downrated. Every platformer I've seen that attempts to be top 1, if it doesn't go the I take 4 hours to beat route, it usually ends up just being a ripoff of I Want to Be the Guy. Now, I want to be very clear, not every needle level is bad, and if you're curious, needle level is the term for these I Want to Be the Guy levels. Not every needle level I've played is bad, and there are some good ones. I actually beat one very recently called I Want to Be the G-Dash, which is a pretty good level, all things considered, but it's the ones that focus way too much on the idea of robot microclicks in half-block spike gaps versus doing a good job at actually recreating I Want to Be the Guy. I Want to Be the G-Dash and other good needle levels focus a lot more on the rage game aspect and have pretty fun jumps, all things considered. What I don't like are the ones that are basically just this micro-click hell. And the worst part is that a lot of these sort of like bad needle levels that have been releasing, a lot of them look really good and have a genuinely good atmosphere. One level that everyone's been excited for is Dawn, or Dead of Night. This level has been getting teaser after teaser after teaser, and it feels like every creator in the goddamn community has a part at this point. It is an insane collab, and it's not explicitly a needle level. Not every single part has needle gameplay, but a lot of them do, and it makes me kind of sad because this is some of the most creative and unique visuals I've seen in this game. I remember when the news reporter part dropped and everyone lost their fucking minds because of how insanely unique it still is, honestly. But the gameplay is just not desirable for me. And if they're not going the I Want to Be the Guy route, they're going the world's hardest game route, having these insanely tight, basically jetpack straight fly sections throughout the entire level. I hate, just in general, how uncreative a lot of difficult platformer gameplay has been, and it's because of that I'm gonna be totally honest, I find easier platformer levels to be fun. I think the ideal difficulty for platformer is Easy Demon. Easy Demon Plats are some of the most fun I've had with this game. Actually, on that note, I do want to mention another thing about this update with platformer mode that really just confuses me. I don't get why it's so hard to just give things a consistent rating. I understand that it is hard to actually compare the difficulty of multiple platformers. That Space Invaders level I mentioned earlier, how are you going to compare that to something like I Want to Be the Guy? It's just not possible. That being said, I don't get why easier levels according to the rate system are harder than levels that are supposed to be harder according to the rate system. What do I mean by this? Well, I created a little bit of a, spreadsheet here just to make recording this part of the video easier, so if this sounds oddly scripted, I apologize, but 1 to 3 moons are the exact same difficulty, and those are the easiest platformers. All of them fundamentally are autos, which might sound weird because the level has inputs, but basically there is nothing in the level that kills you, or if there is, it's so trivial to dodge that there may as well not be anything in the level that kills you, and so literally all you have to do to beat the level is just go where the level wants you to go. There's no challenge, the level is completely free, right? And then above that, you have 4 to 5 moon difficulty levels, which are a step above, and so far we're still on the right track. These are going in order. 4 to 5 moons all feel like what you would expect an easier but with challenge platformer level to be. They make sense. But around here is where the difficulty ratings kind of go off the rails. 6 to 8 moons are the same difficulty as Easy Demon platformers, so 6 to 8 moons and Easy Demon platformer specifically are a tier above 4 to 5 moons in difficulty, and I don't know why, but these are all really hard. If anything, Easy Demon platformers might even be a step below 6 to 8 moons, which is really odd. Then above that you have 9 moons, which are the equivalent of a classic hard demon. I'm not really sure why. Then above that you have medium demon platformers, which are impossible half of the time. Then you have hard to insane demon platformers, which, okay, those make sense being harder than medium demons, but what I want to call out more specifically is that hard and insane demon platformers feel like they're both the same difficulty. And then above that you have extreme demon platformers, which is such a large jump from insane demon platformers that it's basically unachievable for a majority of people. Just to put into perspective how fucked up I have found a lot of these platformer difficulties, I have pulled up my demon list and I have the platformer page, right? And you can see at first it makes sense, you have a bunch of easy demons, whatever, right? A bunch of easy demons, and then you hit a medium demon, and then more easy demons, and then a hard demon, and then an easy demon, and then an insane demon. Now don't get me wrong, these are my rankings for these levels' difficulties, and those are subjective, and people might disagree, but this just goes to show how fucked up the difficulties are when I'm comparing an easy demon to an insane demon. However, unfortunately the mode does have one major problem, and it is a problem that affects most platformer levels just across the board, and it's the reason why a bunch of levels, even if they are good, I simply do not want to play them. Take the Mythics, for example, right? I have not completed a single Mythic platformer. Why is that? Well, that is because, and this is a major problem in my opinion, there still is no platformer saving. This, in my opinion, has been the biggest misstep of 2.2 for this year. The entirety of the year, the whole year, everybody has been asking for the ability to save in platformer. There was a mod that let you do it for a little bit, but as of recording this, that mod is broken in 2.207. You can't use it, it's not in Geode. So, right now, there is no way to save your progress in platformer mode. You have to leave the game running as if it was an NES game that doesn't have the ability to save. We are literally regressing in terms of what you do in platformer games. In my opinion, this lack of an ability to save is kind of a stupid issue, and I think that saving in platformer should have been available day one. I don't really see how Robtop couldn't have seen this as an issue, because even back in the day when, you know, people were making levels like Master Game has a password system, which is very reminiscent of how old NES games, because they didn't have the ability to save, used a password system to sort of get around that and let you save anyway. And I think it's really annoying that Geometry Dash keeps getting compared to the fucking NES, because that console came out in the 80s. This is a modern PC game. Yeah, it's around 10 years old, but it's a PC game in the modern day. Video games have had the ability to save since the 90s. What makes this extra frustrating is that there's a lot of levels that straight up play worse because of the lack of an ability to save. One of the problems I forgot to mention about platformer, and I might as well mention it here, is the balancing. A lot of people like to make the levels get harder the farther in you go, to the point where the final room is significantly harder than everything else in the level. And the problem with that is it's frustrating. And when a platformer level is frustrating, that is way different than when a side-scroller level is frustrating. A side-scroller level, the whole point is to beat it in one sitting. But platformer mode, that's not the point. You have checkpoints. As long as you hit a checkpoint, you no longer have to start from the beginning. The idea is you hit checkpoint, you continue from checkpoint. But if you get frustrated and you quit the level, you lose that progress. And losing progress in a level that's like 4 hours long, that hurts a lot. Now, like I mentioned, I haven't beaten a single platformer that is rated Mythic. And the reason for that is because all of the Mythic platformers are at minimum like 15 minutes long. And that's assuming you play the level optimally, don't make a single mistake, and practically speedrun the fucking things. In reality, the levels that are about 15 minutes long take upwards of 2 hours to complete. In the past, when I've discussed this issue, a common response I've gotten is, you don't have to close the game or the level. Why don't you just pause it and leave the game running and then come back to it later? Yeah, well, what if there's a power outage? What if Windows, in its infinite wisdom, decides to force an update when you go to sleep? What if literally anything happens at all? You're screwed. It is not unrealistic to believe someone would want to close the game when they take a break from it. People tend to forget this, but human beings have lives, you know what I mean? People have work that they have to go to. People go to school. People, spend time with their family. People go out and do things. And also, I don't know what it's like in big cities and major populated areas, but I live in an area that is miles and miles of just fields and forests, and when you live in an environment like that, something as simple as high winds can just knock out your power. What confuses me too is that back in February during a Reddit AMA, Robtop literally said that he wanted to add platformer saving. He said it. Here's the screenshot. It exists. And yeah, it's been 10 months since Robtop said that. I don't know what's going on with this. I thought in the 2.206 teaser when I saw this symbol that it meant platformer saving, but apparently that just means restart at last checkpoint in practice mode, which really disappointed me. But I feel like it's just an annoying thing that we've waited 10 months for this basic feature that should have been in the game from the beginning. And it sucks. It really does. And you might think this isn't that big of a deal, but it's insane how held back platformer mode is by just the sheer fact that you can't save alone. I'm sure that if you could actually save and quit levels, people would be making games that have longer how long to beat times than AAA releases. Going back to the level I mentioned earlier, Terminus, the one with the, big mech spaceships and the Space Invader style gameplay, yeah, so that level, right? Imagine if the creator could have made that level even better by making it a full-fledged game that took, days to complete. That would be really cool. And the only reason we're not getting fully fledged games made in platformer mode is because there is no save feature, which is really sad. That being said, that's basically all the complaints I have about this mode. However, I'm still going to keep tabs on this mode because I genuinely think that this mode has a lot of potential, and a lot of the things I've been seeing people make are just insane. Some of these levels are breathtaking and really fun to play. I do think that platformer is in its infancy, and I think that I'm gonna have to give it a few years, multiple years, years with an S, before I fully decide how I feel about the mode.
The Earth is spinning, and we are spinning along with it.
I don't really know how we managed to go this entire video so far without talking about the swing game mode. Yeah, so the swing is based off of the swing copter, which I now call the ball copter, because if I call both the 2.2 swing copter and the old swing copter the same thing, that would just get confusing. It always was a trend that people would have a dual ball, and they would trap one of them at the top of the screen, have a bunch of blue jump rings, and it would allow you to do this, like, mid-air click movement thing with the ball, and everyone called it the swing copter. And the ball copter as a mode does not function the same way as the swing does. This fact kinda already made the swing controversial from the beginning because people have already gotten used to the ball copter. They've had plenty of time to get accustomed to it, and it's to the point where sections like this exist in levels like Tartarus. For all intents and purposes, the swing and the ball copter are not the same mode. The ball copter has these sudden and very steep and fast-paced movements, whereas the swing is very tanky and very heavy. It does these slow, sweeping movements. I will say, however, in my personal opinion, I think this is actually fine. I prefer the swing over the ball copter, and I've had to deal with the ball copter in the past. I don't like the ball copter. I think the swing plays a lot better. But even if you like the ball copter, you have to admit that it is such a finicky and oddly specific game mode, and yeah, I don't know why people were expecting Rob to have the swing function exactly like the ball copter. If that was the case, it would by far be the hardest mode in the game, and it makes sense for Rob to make the game mode easier to control so that people don't struggle with it compared to the other game modes. Beyond that, though, I just really like this game mode. I think it controls extremely well, and on top of that, I've seen people already being very creative with this game mode and making some gameplay that, honestly, I didn't even think you could make with the swing. It's really cool what people have made with this mode. The only downside to the swing, which it isn't an insignificant downside, it is kind of a big deal, but it's also fine, like it doesn't affect the game that much, but it is kind of a negative and I want to point it out. I feel like a lot of people don't actually know what to do with the swing. And I say this, and this mainly applies to easier levels, I say this because a ton of the levels I've played, especially around the Easy Demon range, you get to a swing section and it is significantly easier and more open than the rest of the level. You just go straight and it just feels very aimless and very, I don't know, it's like in Stereo Madness how the first ship is like super open. Except if the first ship in Stereo Madness was in an Easy Demon. A lot of the sections feel like that to me. I am kind of swing carried, though. Like, I'm like, actually decent at the swing. So, maybe it is just me? I don't know. This is something I actually want to ask you all about. Like, how do you feel about the swing? Do you think it's easy? Do you think it's hard? Most specifically, what do you think about the sections people have been making with the swing? I want to know if you think they're hard or not. I'll say this though, one of the biggest issues with people struggling to figure out how to build swing gameplay is the transitions. Consistently, I come across levels where the actual section is easy, but I don't actually know what gravity I'm starting the swing section in. It's because some levels use a gravity portal to assist you and set you to the right gravity, and others just kind of drop you in and you need to click the second you touch the portal. And truthfully, I don't know which of those two I prefer, and therefore I don't have a solution to this. Even Dash has a transition that threw me off when I first played the level. That being said though, aside of those issues, I gotta be honest, I find the swing game mode really fun. Like, just hands down, it is one of my favorite game modes. Even in those previously mentioned aimless and empty sections, I just like trying the swing and messing around with it and trying to control it as well as I can and playing around with it. And in levels that don't have that aimless feeling and have these strict, really difficult swing sections, even those are fun. I genuinely think this is one of the better game modes in the game, and I'm kinda glad it doesn't control like the ball copter, to be honest. And guys, listen, alright? I know some people are upset that it doesn't control like the ball copter. But you can still make the ball copter. If you prefer the ball copter, just put the ball copter in your level instead of the swing. That's really not that hard to do, but Yeah, that's my take on the whole thing, and I am a big fan of the swing game mode.
Yeah, that's a joke, son. Don't you get it? I made a funny, son, and you're not laughing.
One thing that happened that I did not expect is that a 2.21 feature became a 2.2 feature. It got released early, and that feature is event levels. And I gotta say, I really don't know how to feel about it. So the event level tab, how I originally assumed it would work, is that it would be, you know, a big event in the community. Basically, one level would get released, whether or not Robtop would partner with the creator, or the creator would just release the level on their own accord. What I figured would happen is that a level would be released, and it would be set as the event level because of its popularity, and it would stay an event level for, you know, around a month. It would just be this big thing where everyone is playing the same level. I don't really know exactly how I expected this to work, or what I expected it to be exactly, but in my head I was kind of picturing like, oh, there's this one level that released that literally everyone is playing and is like the talk of the GD community. Let's set it as the monthly demon. You know, it doesn't even have to be difficulty gated, it just has to be a level that is absurdly popular. That wasn't the only idea as to what it could be that I had. I also thought maybe it could be something to do with platformer mode. See, dailies and weeklies, as of recording this, have never been platformers, and honestly, I think it'd be weird if they could be, because I feel like these are classic exclusive things. I wouldn't be opposed to platformers being set as dailies or weeklies, but I just assumed that event levels was that. I didn't even think it was gated on time or difficulty. I thought it was literally like, oh, event levels. Well, this is a platformer that literally everyone is playing, or something like that, right? But the point is, I had all these different ideas as to what event levels would be, and I think even the community would occasionally ask Robtop about it in GDS, and then it comes out, and it's basically just used to advertise things. See, I just feel very underwhelmed by the feature, because event levels are not really anything. There is no requirement for a level to be an event level. To me, event levels are just Robtop is doing a thing and he wants to promote it, and that's it, right? Currently, we are still in the first event, and we've gotten multiple event levels for this event, and that's the No Copyright Sounds Geometry Dash album, right? Basically, every single song of the album has gotten a level made by a community figure, and every single one of those levels being released coincides with the release of a song for the album, and every time the level's released, it's set as the event level. What's strange about this is that the levels are usually event levels for longer than a week, but not as long as something like a month, and the amount of time that a level is set as the event level seems very arbitrary. And I just feel like that confuses me a bit, because I don't know what the point of this tab is other than just a promotional tab. The main thing that bothers me especially, though, is just that there really isn't a guideline as to what an event level even is. Like, sometimes event levels are easier than the average daily, and other times they're about the same difficulty as the average weekly demon, and there's no coherency among any of them, there's no real purpose to them. It's literally just Robtop wants to advertise a thing, and so he sets a level as the event level, and that's it. And truth be told, if event levels were something lamer than what I was expecting, and that was it, right? If it was just, oh, the event level is more lame than what I expected it to be, that'd be one thing. But the problem I have with event levels really comes down to I don't even know what they are to begin with. And let me also be very clear, I'm not speaking on the quality of the levels themselves, because pretty much every event level has been good so far. It literally just comes down to the fact that I don't know what the point of the button in the menu is. Like, I don't know why we needed an event button, because I feel like it would just be better if these levels were released and that was it. I mean, it's honestly getting to a point where I feel like Gauntlet's releasing is more of an event than event levels releasing. And what's even weirder is that the event levels have a currency tied to them, these gold coins, But, like, gold coins also don't follow any logic. The first gold coin ever given out, you got for beating an easy demon, and the second one you got for beating a 9-star. The weird thing about gold keys releasing this way is that everyone's going to get gold keys at the same time, which means everyone's going to open the same chests at the same time. I don't know if the rewards are randomized, but what I do know is that everyone's going to finish opening every gold chest at the same time. And this is where things start to get really weird for me, okay? So, you get a reward for beating the level, because, you know, the actual event chest itself. You get another reward for beating the level by using the gold key. And then, on top of that, there's a new vault called the Wraith, and this is an interesting vault in concept because the idea of this vault is that all the codes are stored server-side and not in the game files, so you can't data mine for them. You either have to look it up on the internet or actually just figure out the code yourself. Like, for all intents and purposes, there could be a code as we speak that the community has yet to discover, because they're all stored server-side. Someone has to guess by sheer chance. That being said, in execution, this doesn't really work too well, because the best rewards the Wraith has ever given out, you get just by typing the name of the most recent event level. Like, if you just scroll through the event level safe, you can get most of the good codes. The codes are Back on Dash, Geometry, Citadel, Retrospective, and Ruins, as of speaking. I just think that that's really lame, because that means you get a third reward just for beating the event level. So, let me put this into perspective now, okay? An event level gets set, say Ruins by Grax, right? Ruins by Grax gets set as the event level. You beat the level, open the event level chest, you get one reward. It gives you a gold key. So you open the gold key chest and you get another reward. You then go to the Wraith and type in the word Ruins and you get another reward. That's 3 separate rewards just for beating one level, which feels a bit overwhelming and also a bit overkill. What also doesn't help, though, is that there's no point in typing in a lot of these codes. A lot of the codes give you either shards or just arbitrary amounts of orbs and diamonds. Like, one of the vault codes is Skibbity, and it gives you one single blue orb. But there are good rewards in the Wraith Vault for typing in the names of event levels. And see, I think this is really backwards. I honestly think it would work the other way around if typing in the names of the levels is a lesser reward because they're easier codes to figure out, and then typing in these, like, Easter egg codes gives you icons and stuff. I think that would make a lot more sense, because at the moment, it's literally just, you get a reward, and then another reward, and then an icon from a vault from one level. A level, mind you, that is just arbitrarily chosen because Robtop wants that to be the event level. I don't know, it's just weird. It's all very weird.
Peter, what are you doing? Crack? What the fuck?
So this is going to be one of the most controversial points in this video, and it's also going to be one of the longest points in this video, and it's also going to be one of the most negative points in this video. Yeah, I want to talk about the quality of gameplay as 2.2 has gone on. So earlier in the video, I talked about level quality in 2.2, and I still stand by everything in that segment. I think that level quality has generally gone up in this update. However, one thing I didn't speak that much about was gameplay quality, and the reason for that is because I think that that has been one of the weakest parts of levels in 2.2. While the actual quality of the levels has gone up, I personally believe that the quality of gameplay is kind of going down. Now, make no mistake, that doesn't mean every level in this update is bad, or I hate 2.2 gameplay or anything like that. Quite the contrary, some of my favorite levels are 2.2 levels. For those of you who watched my Best Easy Demons video, I consider the best Easy Demon at the moment to be Cut Deep. Cut Deep is a fantastic level, and it's a 2.2 level that's pretty heavy on 2.2 features. However, unfortunately, a lot of levels have been doing something that I really don't like, and that's they've been going after clout on YouTube, and a lot of levels by doing so have appeared to focus a lot more on these flashy and, like, almost overwhelming visuals that are just meant to be extremely stimulating to a viewer on a platform like YouTube. But because they focus so much on the visuals, the gameplay takes a massive hit. Honestly, just to break this down, I'm gonna have to split this section into sort of subsections talking about each individual problem I have with the gameplay, because there's just so much to talk about. So the first major problem with a lot of gameplay that I've been noticing lately is the over-reliance on jump indicators. Now, I'm not reviving the old debate that Robtop caused by commenting on levels angry about, like, normal jump indicators. I'm talking about gameplay where if you do not click exactly inside of the jump indicator, the whole part just breaks. If you do not click exactly where the jump indicator says to, it breaks not only the part, but the whole level in some cases. I've encountered a lot of parts where if I click an orb a little bit late, but I still successfully click in the orb, the next click is so misaligned that it just doesn't work. Another issue that I've been running into a lot is levels with really deceptive hitboxes. There's a level called Sea Hunter, and if you don't count minigames like the level Brain Fugged, Sea Hunter is currently the easiest demon in the game as far as my knowledge goes. The only reason this level is demon, and the only challenge this level presents to the player at all, is the scuffed hitboxes. It is really hard to tell what can and can't kill you in this level, but the moment you figure it out, it becomes free. I don't like this. I really think that a lot of 2.2 levels have really been screwing things up when it comes to the hitboxes. This problem is so widespread that it even occurs in levels that I would consider to be good. Take Get Happier by Knots as an example. I have the level pulled up right here in practice mode. I'm going to demonstrate this in real time because I don't know how to explain this otherwise. So, this part, right? It looks like you can just jump whenever you want off of this platform and hit this spider orb, right? But what happens is if you hit it and you jump too far, it kills you because there's a third extra block to the left. For no reason. I think it's there to try to assist so that if you buffer the spider orb, you don't die. But I'd rather die from not buffering than have a hidden block here that kills me if I jump too high. And also, I just buffered the spider orb. I didn't die. So, it just all around isn't needed. But this is just annoying, and I've had issues like this all across the game. I don't get why so many creators have been doing stuff like this, but the invisible bad assist platforms have been really frustrating to deal with. Another issue I've been seeing crop up a lot is bad camera controls. I feel like this is something everyone saw coming from even before 2.2 released. I will say this, it is not as bad as I think people expected it to be, which is insane. A majority of levels don't have that bad of camera controls, but when you come across bad camera controls in a rated level, it is awful. It is so infuriating. One of the most common things levels do is just zoom the camera out way too much. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it messes with your perception of game physics really badly, and I just don't like it. Another issue, going back to the whole jump indicator thing that I mentioned earlier, but ironically, this is like a completely unrelated problem, there are some levels where they play like absolute dog shit, and instead of the creator fixing the gameplay, they just put a jump indicator for literally every single jump. I have a problem with this for one main reason, and that's, it doesn't feel like you're properly playing the level. It feels like you're following a guide on how to beat the level. It's really hard to explain, but these levels, you don't pay attention to the environment or anything going on the level at all. These kinds of levels quite literally just become jump when you see the funny arrow, and it just makes for a really boring experience. There's also some levels that will just cover up the foreground and be really obnoxious about it to the point where you can't really see what's going on behind whatever effect is in the foreground. Some of these are really hard to explain too, because while a lot of of them, it's pretty obvious how it covers up the gameplay. A majority of them, you can't really tell unless you're playing it for yourself. It's especially bad when the thing that's covering up the foreground is some kind of really flashy effect. But then we have what I consider to be one of the biggest issues with the gameplay that has been coming out recently. And ironically, this affects every level as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is such a widespread issue, and I say that it affects every level because your level can have good gameplay, and you can still fuck this up, and a lot of people have been. Even if a level has good gameplay, nothing can save a level from bad low detail modes. Listen, okay? It's called a low detail mode. It is a mode that has low amounts of detail. Low detail modes exist for one reason and one reason only: to assist players who lag too much to be able to play the level. The point of getting rid of detail is that it gives you a boost in performance. It makes the game run better. So tell me why Astrolith's low detail mode looks like this? Look, I get it. I understand that it's a trade-off for some people. They don't want their level to just end up looking ugly. I get it. But that's why a lot of people have an LDM and then a ULDM. The LDM ends up being basically what we've been getting, where it just removes a bit of detail but still has some, and then the ULDM is the thing that strips it of pretty much all the deco. And I really think that the fact people just don't want to make ULDMs is kind of a problem. But what's even worse is I've come across some levels that have ULDMs, and even the ULDM lags. At the very least, I just wish creators would make good ULDMs that actually remove deco, because there are some levels that, well, yes, I was able to beat them, my enjoyment rating was significantly lower purely just because I couldn't run it. What happens when a level is laggy is it makes the game less precise. It makes it harder to make jumps. In general, I hate it when I die in a level and it doesn't feel like it's my fault. I like to be able to blame myself because then I have some sort of criteria to improve from. Oh, I messed up this timing, I better practice it, right? But there's no practicing to get around lag. Lag is just, in general, a problem that you cannot deal with in any way other than making a more optimized version of the level. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't you just get leaderboard banned recently? Why do you care about legitimacy? Why don't you just beat a level on a copy that removes even more deco? Well, the problem with that is that I still want to beat the levels legitimately. Leaderboard rules or not. And if the creator doesn't include a ULDM that functions, well, I can't just make a ULDM that functions. It all comes down to creator intent. And besides, not everyone has the ability to hack a level for stats. iOS users would be totally screwed in this regard. And before you say iOS users are at a disadvantage, majority of the levels that I've been dealing with this problem with have been easy demons, which mobile users can beat. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other issues with gameplay that can crop up aside of that, but these are like the main ones that I've been encountering in a majority of levels. A lot of levels have these problems, and it makes it really, really annoying because, here's the thing, right? A lot of you may think that these are small issues and they don't affect the levels that much. Well, I think it's time to talk about the NCS Gauntlet contest.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yeah, so the NCS Gauntlet, to me, is the culmination of everything wrong with 2.2 levels and every flaw you could possibly think of. They're all here. Every single point I just made, combined. Like, there are some levels that are only bad in one of the examples I gave, like Magistro has the lag issue. Berserker is a good example of the arrow trigger bullshit, because you get sections like this where if you just do it slightly off and slightly wrong while the camera's rotating, it kills you. So this is a mix of the arrow trigger problem and the jump indicator problem, and it makes this section really annoying to play. However, those levels are from the NCS-1 Gauntlet, and the NCS-1 Gauntlet is significantly better than the NCS-2 Gauntlet. Oh my god, fuck this Gauntlet. You know what, though? The first two levels get a pass. Icy Stars gets a pass because it is just an XL, and the only reason I dislike this level is it's XL. It's pretty straightforward, all things considered. And Slasher gets a pass because it's straight up a good level. I like Slasher. I think it's a decent level. Neo Zenith is a little weirder, but I don't think this level's bad. I just think it's a bad choice for the Gauntlet. I think maybe a minigame level wasn't the greatest idea. But I also have no room to talk because somehow I fluked Neo Zenith from 0%. But then you have the last two levels, which single-handedly bring down all of these levels for me. Magistro is a little bit more forgivable. As much as I dislike this level immensely, its main problem is that lag issue I mentioned earlier. Yeah, there are some garbage transitions here and there, but the main problem this level has just comes down to the fact that I can't fucking run it, even with the ULDM. And I think that that's kind of a problem. But the last level, WannaCry. Oh my god, where do I even start? WannaCry is an absolute piece of shit. I would dedicate an entire review to this, but I don't think I'd be able to keep my composure. This level makes me legitimately angry, and I could go on a fucking hour-long rant about every mistake this level makes. Everything about this level, aside of the visuals, sucks ass. This level looks pretty. That is the nicest thing I can say about it. Everything else about this level sucks, and it doesn't even have the charm of an actually shitty level like Sponge, where at least you can laugh at it. This level is bad in every single way, including the fact that even when you get over its bullshit, it's just fucking boring. Like, this level, you can tell, was only made for YouTube. Let me dial it back. The level starts with the worst section, which is a good thing. I will definitely say, I'd rather not have any bad sections, but assuming it's going to have some bad sections, I'd rather the worst part be at the beginning, because that means I either die to it immediately or I pass it. There's no build-up to it, it's not a choke point. And honestly, this part is bad more as a consequence of its gimmick, and so, you know what? Forgivable. I do think that maybe throwing in a UFO section was probably the biggest mistake this part made, because you really just cannot gauge the UFO. There is no depth at all. You just cannot tell where you are in contrast to the environment. And then the entire middle point of the level is basically just filler gameplay. But then you have the ending. You have shitty camera controls, shitty decoration, and yes, I am calling this decoration shitty because it is not visually appealing to look at, and all it does is hurt your eyes and obscure the gameplay. This part looks like shit. You also have, like, these really unnecessarily massive difficulty spikes, robot jumps that are really hard to gauge because, again, the gameplay's covered up. And on top of that, almost everything about this gameplay is gimmicky and stupid. Oh my god, I hate this gameplay so fucking much. I can't keep myself contained. I'm trying to stay calm and be constructive, but I'm just gonna be honest. This level sucks dick, dude. This is one of the worst fucking levels I have ever played. There's a reason why I have yet to make a video about the NCS Gauntlet contest, and it's because of this level. This is the kind of anger that I express through this level, and it's bad enough to where I can barely contain myself when it's a tiny little segment of a segment in a longer 1 hour video. This level just makes me legitimately angry because everything about this level screams clout chasing. This level was made just for attention on YouTube. There is nothing appealing about playing it. If you tell me that you enjoy this level's gameplay, I respect your opinion, but I'm also going to respectfully press X to doubt. Fuck this level. It is every issue I discussed in the last segment, just talking about 2.2 gameplay in general, right? All of those problems apply here. Now, I know WannaCry is obviously the one I hate the most, by miles, right? Compared to WannaCry, the others look good and play well. I still have issues with the others. The others have issues with bugs and badly designed LDMs and poor gameplay and over-reliance on jump indicators. Just all of the problems I discussed before. Every level in these gauntlets has at least one of those problems. WannaCry, to me, is the perfect ending to the NCS Gauntlet, in my opinion, because it has every single one of those problems. All of them, unanimously. It is the worst of them all because it is basically all of the problems with the previous levels combined. Let's switch things up and be positive. Yes, we're doing it at WannaCry's expense, but we're still being positive. Part of why this Gauntlet contest is a failure to me, and why I'm so upset with it, right? Why I think this is, like, the worst thing to come out of 2.2 so far, is that this contest had money on the line, and I think that there are other levels that deserve the prize money more. There are levels in this contest that, well, yeah, they might not be as flashy and YouTube clickbait material as something like WannaCry or Berserker. These levels have a lot more going for them, both in terms of theming, gameplay, and in some cases, even decoration. One of my favorite 2.2 levels to drop in general is Uprising. Uprising is a fantastic level that not only introduced me to an NCS song that I had never heard, but also utilized that song very well with parts like this. The singer literally says, "You let me drown and then picked me back up, and you fall into the water and get back out." It's really clever sync. There's a lot of really clever just playfulness with the way the level represents the song. There's also when the singer screams Phoenix and you see the creator of the level dressed up like Phoenix Wright. It's just got a lot of charming stuff like that. The gameplay throughout the level is fantastic, and there really isn't any low points. The closest thing to a complaint that I have is that it has a lot of upside-down ship, and uses the new ship physics, which are obviously very hard to get used to. I personally think Uprising is one of the best levels to come out of the NCS Gauntlet contest, and it really is a shame that it didn't even get into any of the gauntlets. I will say at least it got into the Force Gauntlet, so it's gonna get some of the attention it deserves, but like, if it were me, Uprising would have won the contest. Another really fantastic level is Celebration by Abstract Dark. This level is really, really good, and I think has the best theming out of every single level in the NCS Gauntlet contest. And I'm not joking when I say, if you just removed WannaCry and replaced it with either Celebration or Uprising, I think it would have made the gauntlets better by a lot. It's just, I don't know. These gauntlets are a massive missed opportunity to me, and I will always hate these two gauntlets. I honestly didn't even want to beat them at first. It definitely was something I had to force myself to do. But I do want to just remind all of you of what I just said means. Just because there are a couple bad levels that have come out in 2.2 doesn't mean that every level is bad. There are a couple reoccurring issues, as I've discussed, but for every WannaCry, there's an Uprising.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to each and every one of you. I couldn't have asked for a more creative and passionate community, and it's been awesome to see all the things you've done.
So originally, I was just going to end the video there. However, I want to say like 3 days ago, I was having a discussion with a friend, and they made a very valid point. A point so valid that I actually want to make it here. And it's also a positive note, too, so I want to be able to end the video on a positive note. I want to talk about Robtop, the developer of Geometry Dash himself. Robtop, from what I've been seeing online, has a mostly positive reputation. However, that reputation has this sort of stink of people talking down on Robtop. I always see people talking about how he's a inexperienced or bad developer and all this sort of stuff. I want to challenge that. For being the only developer on a game of this scale, what he's managed to do is very impressive. And I want to mainly call attention to one thing that specifically started with the wait for 2.2, but escalated greatly with 2.2's release, and that's Robtop taking community feedback. Say whatever you want about Robtop, but the one thing I have been the most grateful for this whole year is that it feels like if the community says something, Robtop hears it, and it makes me very happy because there have been so many issues with the game and just with the community in general that Robtop one way or another has been able to fix just by communicating with the community. There have even, as I mentioned way back when I was talking about mods, there are things that started as mods with the community that after the community modded these features in, Robtop added them because the community wanted them. This is stuff like hearing the level song in practice mode, or being able to push the level complete screen up so you can look at the end screen, being able to use no-clip to test levels, being able to turn on hitboxes in practice mode. These are all things that only exist in the game because the developer and the community have a good relationship with one another. It's because of that I want to end this video with a thank you. Thank you, Robtop, for giving us one of the best games in basically the one of the best games ever, in my opinion, because I know it's cliche to get all sappy at the end of videos like this, but the main reason I'm being so nice is because take Geometry Dash as a game and compare it to literally any other game. You could even go indie, right? Geometry Dash just feels special compared to literally any other game on the market right now, and you know, you could point to a lot of things. You could point to people pushing the skill ceiling. You could point to the insane custom levels people are able to make. You could even point to the dev himself and all of the cool things about him. But there is one single thing that I think keeps this game alive. This game and its community have a good relationship with the developer. That is what I think keeps this game alive. Look at an equally big community. Look at something like the Minecraft community, right? When's the last time that Mojang or Microsoft actually listened to the community, right? And made a change that the community wants versus a change that'll put money in the pockets of Microsoft, right? Now name the last time Robtop made a change that was purely money-based. I can't think of one. The only thing I can think of is the existence of Geometry Dash World. And even then, World is still for the players because it gives free-to-play players the ability to play some online levels. This game is surviving... No, sorry. This game is thriving because of Robtop. And I just, again, I can't thank the dev enough for this because I think that this game is something special and I don't think it's going away for a long time. Because of that, I have a lot of confidence in saying I'll see you guys next year with another one of these videos. And with that, I think I've said everything I need to say. Thank you for watching.